Hello guys and welcome to this Volks Wizard video. Now when I bought my Mk8 GTI Clubsport earlier this year, it came from main dealer stock, which meant I didn't spec it, and all stock cars at that time had no options on them at all, which meant I had to do without a feature I love to have on all my cars wherever possible, and that is dynamic chassis control, DCC adaptive suspension. I'd driven a Mk8 GTI with 245 horsepower on passive dampers without DCC a few months earlier, and I found that car surprisingly hard, and I was a little bit worried a Clubsport on passive dampers would be even harder and just be too uncomfortable for me to use on a daily basis, particularly once I ditched the original 18-inch Richmond wheels and fitted the far nicer 19-inch Vosens that it's on right now. Now I've been driving it on 19s for a couple of months, and I've got to say it is just about comfortable enough. It can be a little bit turbulent on broken urban roads, but get it out of town onto some proper roads and it's a truly incredible car to drive even on passive dampers. But there's no getting away from the fact that nearly every reviewer of the Mk8 GTI Clubsport has said that DCC is a must-have option, and I wanted to find out for myself if I was possibly missing out by not having it. And to do that, Volkswagen UK have very kindly loaned me a Mk8 GTI Clubsport with DCC. You might recognise this car, G8 VWW, because it's a very hard-working member of the Volkswagen UK press fleet. So today we're going to compare it with my passive damper GTI Clubsport and find out once and for all if DCC really is a must-have option. Okay, firstly I'd like to have a look at the physical differences between a passive damper Clubsport and the DCC version. There are three areas I'd like to cover. Firstly, we're going to have a look at the ride height. There have been rumours that DCC cars sit a bit lower, and we're going to measure that today right here. Then we'll have a look at the dampers and see how they physically look different to each other. And then finally, we'll have a look inside the car at the user interface, basically what happens when you press the mode button. Before we do that, I just want to remind you guys that I am a used car dealer here at Volks Wizard, specialising in interesting VW Group vehicles. So if you've got a Mark 7 Golf GTI of any sort to sell, 7.5, get in touch. Or an R if you've got a TTRS or a TTS or anything interesting really. It could even be a Skoda Octavia VRS or a Seat Leon Cupra. If it's good condition, full service history, then get in touch. My contact details are in the description of the video below. Right, let's firstly get measuring the suspension on these cars. So we've got a tape measure here. I'll put my glasses on, and we're going to start off at the front of my passive damper car. Now it's probably not in the middle of the wheel, but it's going to be consistent if we use this wheel arch extender as the marker. So that's straight, and that's 67mm dead on. So you happy with that? Let's go over to the DCC car right here. And you know what? That is pretty much bang on identical. Again, flat on the floor there. Right, onto the back. So we haven't got a wheel arch extender to help us here, so we will go like that. I think that's good. So you can see it's 68 and let's say 2, so 682mm, that's flat on the floor. Now for the DCC car. So are you happy that's in the middle? I think so. Where are we? Well, that's actually 674. So weirdly, that is 8mm lower. Even if you move it around a bit, like don't get it centered on the wheel, it's not going to be that different. That's 675. So the highest point is actually there. So 675. So 7mm lower. Now there is a little bit of difference in fuel range, but not an awful lot. The ignition's on, so you can see that's got 310 mile range. So it goes up to the I. Sorry about the beep. And this is my car. It's got 225 range and it goes up to the end of the numbers. So it's a few gallons lighter, but I don't really think that would make the difference. So maybe 2mm difference will be the fuel, but there's definitely 5mm lower in the back of that car. Right, physical difference in the dampers could be quite difficult to show you, but let me get on the floor. You can see the damper there. It's just a plain tube with no electronics on it. Right, let's have a look at the DCC car. Where there's nothing on my car, there's a big sort of tube with a plug on the end of it, and that's where the electronic control goes into the damper. So the electronics will make the oil in the damper different, and that will affect the ride quality. Very clever stuff, and for 785 quid, it's, yeah, seems like really good value, and they do seem to be quite reliable. Right, let's now have a look at the user interface, which I've prepared, hence all the bonging. Okay, so we have a mode button that usually works. Here we have Eco, Comfort, Sport and Individual. There's no special mode if you go into Individual where you can configure it. There's nothing here for suspension. Chassis, as Henry Catchpole in his review concluded, was to do with the VAQ front differential. There's nothing here to make the suspension harder or softer. Nothing that says Nürburgring. Let's now have some beeping in this car. Right, oh, and for geeks, let's just show you what the software version of this car is before we do that, because this is different to mine. Settings, system information, so software version 1788, so I presume this car, being a VW UK press car, has had all the latest updates, and it seems to be working really well. Okay, mode. We have on the face of it the same Eco, Comfort, Sport, but then you press Sport and you get this special mode. I did have a little chat with the guy at Volkswagen about why they called it special and not just Nürburgring, and I concluded, he didn't necessarily agree, that they couldn't fit Nürburgring in because it's quite a long word, so they just called it special. It's like that, because individual is a bit tight, and I think Nürburgring is like a few more characters. So yeah, that's my take on that, but I could be wrong. Okay, so we've got this thing popping out, which is quite trick. Look at that. Oof. And then that. So that gives you basically everything in aggressive apart from the dampers, which are in comfort mode. The other difference is, and this is probably more important really, you've got all this adjustment for the suspension here. So you can change everything else into the default, which is comfort, but you can go even more comfortable. So 3 clicks softer than the default comfort setting if you're in comfort mode, and likewise there are 3 more than sport as well. So yeah, we'll find out exactly how that relates to driving though when we go for a drive. So let's go and do that now, starting off with my passive damper Clubsport. Welcome guys to Leamington Spa, and I'm here because this is a kind of urban road where the surface is a bit broken up with repairs and sunken bits, and you'll just see now, you can hear that car bumping along on that road. It's not the kind of road I drive very often, but when I do, I kind of regret not having DCC. So let's go and see what my passive damper car does on this kind of road. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure if you had a test drive in a passive damper Clubsport like this one on a road like this, you might be put off because it feels like there's very little compliance in the suspension, like the shocks and springs are rock hard, which could get annoying if this is the only kind of road that you drive on. I'm sure a lot of people do drive on these kinds of roads. Like this bit here is, yeah, annoying. I'm normally driving this road with a takeaway pizza on the seat and kind of half expecting most of the topping to be on the seat as well. So yeah, it's not ideal, but thankfully it does improve once you get onto a better road, as we'll find out right now. And this proper road is near the village of Bishop's Itchington in Warwickshire. It's actually not typical of a Warwickshire road because the surface is pretty poor, but there are some lovely bends where you're loading up the car a lot and you're meeting mid-corner bumps, and that's where this car struggles a bit. It's okay, but I'm pretty sure a DCC car could be better. Let's go and find out. Okay, well, one good thing about a passive damper car is that you just bang it into sport and it doesn't affect the ride quality. Of sport on a DCC car is too hard, I think, for this kind of road. So yeah, we're in sport, we're on manual shifting with the paddles. So this is a particularly good corner that if it was smooth this car would just whiz round, but right now the approach is pretty turbulent and then you drop down and then you kind of feel like you might be bouncing from one side of the road to the other. This corner's a bit smoother and it is a delight. That's really impressive. I mean, that was 60 miles an hour on a 60 mile an hour road round one of its worst bends. I don't particularly like this one because of the lamppost on the exit. So compared to the urban driving, it does start to breathe a bit more with the road once it's got a bit more energy to deal with. And it's good fun, but you're always kind of worried what's ahead, especially in corners if you don't know the road very well. I don't actually drive this bit very often, so I'm just having to scan because I can see there's a bend coming up, and if there's like an undulation or a hump or something, I might find myself slightly adrift of where I want to be, particularly with big sort of potholes right on the edge of the carriageway there. It's smoothed out now and the damping is great. There's still some hollows in this road and it's like yumps, but it's dealing with those great. It's just when it gets beyond a certain point like that, we've got quite a bit of bounce. But then we are going quite fast, so shouldn't really complain too much. It's a great car, this. I think though it's time to see if the DCC car is even greater. Okay, we're back in Leamington Spa on the bumpy urban road, and we've got the DCC Clubsport in comfort mode. And I've got to say, it doesn't really feel any different to my car. It's still a bit jarring over these imperfections. The only difference is we can go a little bit softer because individual mode allows that, so we've got 3 clicks softer, and okay, it may be a tiny bit softer than my car, but yeah, it's still not happy on roads like this, even with DCC. That's because we've got stiff springs, we've got stiff bushes. The dampers only influence the ride so much on a car like this. So yeah, it's still pretty firm. You could actually just quickly try ring mode. And yeah, I'd say that sits somewhere around the comfort side of the spectrum. Right, let's now go and find a proper road. Okay, we're on a pretty good road. I'm just pondering which mode I'd use if we didn't have ring mode. You could try comfort. The dampers are good in that, but the steering weight is a bit too light. The throttle response is a bit dulled, and you get drive rather than sport in the gearbox. So if you go for sports, you get sport mode in the gearbox, you get the steering weight back, but it's just a little bit turbulent. It's not even that bumpy here. But let's go special, let's go Nürburgring. Now this is a really important corner. My Clubsport doesn't like this because it's just a bit too hard. And you're turning and there are bumps and it just feels like it's going to bounce, but there's just so much more compliance to this car. It does roll a bit, which is a bit unnerving at first, but my God, is there grip on these with these Goodyear Eagle F1 Super Sports. This is a horrible little corner with a lamppost there to stop your understeer, but it is delicious. I thought my car was good. I thought ring mode was just a bit of marketing, but wow! And we've still got that pointy, agile front end that my car's got that I was worried it wouldn't have, because the Golf R I drove with DCC didn't have it. It felt a bit more inert, but clearly that's just because it's a Golf R. We've got compliance, we've got a lovely front end. I can enjoy this road now. Normally I'm just scanning for bumps and hollows and now I don't need to, I can just enjoy. There is one little fly in the ointment, and that is the gearbox. They still kick down, which you'd have thought in ring mode they would have given us at least manual shifting, but no, it will change up when it gets to the red line, and when you're coming out of your corner, you're giving it the beans because there's so much grip, it will kick down when you don't want it to, and that's a bit annoying. If they would only just give us the manual gearbox mode, this would be perfect. Okay, and finally, just for comparison's sakes, we've got a Mark 7 Golf GTI Clubsport Edition 40. It's also on 19s, it's also on passive dampers, so a perfect match for my own car. I actually sold this car 4 years ago and I didn't enjoy it. I found it a bit too unyielding. I had a Clubsport S then with DCC, of course, and that was a lot more fluid. And this is why I was worried my Mark 8 Clubsport would not drive as nicely, but it's certainly better than this. First thing you notice, there's quite a bit of float. And it's just as firm as newer cars, but it's just not as precise. The steering isn't as nice, there's more roll, and it does this sort of unnerving pitching motion as it loads up. The newer cars are a lot flatter. This is just a typical sort of Volkswagen, which was great at the time, but there's a reason why when you ordered a TCR with 19s, they made you have DCC. It's just because it was a lot better than this setup. I mean, it's still good, but it's got less mechanical grip as well. The roads are bone dry and warm, and we still span up the outer tyre there. So it's good, but I'm pleased to report the newer cars are even better. So is DCC dynamic chassis control a must-have option, or is it simply just a gimmick? Well, for £785, frankly, I wouldn't overthink it too much. Just tick that box, because the fact you can make your Clubsport a little bit more comfortable than mine at the press of a button means it's already money well spent, and you can make your Clubsport harder than mine, which is probably quite useful if you're going to take it on track, because this is a firm car on the road, but show it the wide expanse of a UK circuit and it could feel like a bit of a pudding, something I'm going to find in July when I take it on track for the first time. Ring mode is, on the face of it, a bit of a gimmick. I mean, who's going to be crazy enough to take their often heavily financed GTI around the world's most dangerous circuit uninsured? You'd have to be crazy to do that, but it does have one saving grace, and that is that it works really well on our crumbling UK B roads. This car's good on these roads, like a GTI should be, but because this car's a little bit more compliant in ring mode, it's even better. Ring mode is a bit of a gimmick though, because you could probably set the car up in individual mode to be exactly the same, and you could even not have the terrible fake noise that you get with ring mode, but at least it's there at the press of a button, and that leaves individual mode free for you to do what you want with. Have some other setting with a bit less fake noise is what I'd do. You still get the lovely, precise, agile front end of the passive damper car. I was a bit worried the DCC car would maybe lose it, because I drove a Golf R with DCC and it didn't have it, but that's obviously an R thing. The DCC Clubsport still feels as good to drive in that respect as my passive damper car. For £785, it really is a no-brainer, and you'll get most of that back when you come to sell the car, if not more. Don't get me wrong though, a passive damper Clubsport is still an amazing car. It's got a very well judged balance of ride and handling. It's a lot more sophisticated in its suspension than a Mark 7 or 7.5. If you fit those with 19s and passive dampers, they are not the nicest car to drive on a crumbling British B road. Well, this car seems to work a lot better, even though it's firmer in town, say, but when you get it on the open road, yeah, this is still a much nicer car to drive. One other thing to consider is sticking with 18s, particularly on a passive damper car. So we all hate the Richmonds, apart from one or two people on Instagram, that these cars come with as standard. You can buy on the aftermarket other 18s that look a lot better, and most importantly, you can spec them with a bit more offset. Both these cars are on 19s, but mine with a bit more offset on the wheels, I think they're ET45 versus ET51, looks a lot better And I actually think if you had 18s with that offset, they'd look better than these 19s, which are really set into the arch. I'm actually quite disappointed with how this car looks when I've seen it in 3 dimensions rather than on a configurator, because they really are set into the arch. And these are the best wheels you can spec for this car. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this Volkswizard video. If you have, as ever, please comment, please share, please like, and please subscribe. And if you've got an interesting VW, Audi, Seat, Skoda or Porsche to sell, then do get in touch, and I'll see you for the next video very soon.